Ladies and gentlemen, fight fans all around the world, I want to read for you first of all Isaiah 65. It says, I am sought of them that asked not for me. I am found of them that sought me not. I said, behold me, unto a nation that was not called by my name. It's Isaiah 65, 1 to, well, it's actually Isaiah 65, 1. And it's interesting because the people that were called by the Lord's name, they did not seek him. It was the people that was not called by his name that sought him. It was the people who were not of his nation that actually wanted to know more about him. And the irony of the situation is kind of like this boxing match, Gennady Golovkin versus Danny Jacobs. Incidentally, something that's written here that a brother said to me, he was talking about those people don't understand the seed of Jacob. Incidentally, Isaiah 65:9 talks about the seed of Jacob, saying, I will bring forth a seed out of Jacob, and out of Judah an inheritor of my mountains, and my elect shall inherit it, and my servants shall dwell there. It's really interesting that for that person who said that on my channel, talking about they don't know about the seed of Jacob, it was very interesting, brother, that you would say that. It was pretty prophetic. Danny Jacobs versus Gennady Golovkin. So much I can say about this fight. I thought that I would think about it before I started to leave my comments this afternoon on this fight, because I wanted to watch the fight a couple times before I actually passed judgment or said something about the fight. So I've watched it a couple times, and you know, a lot of people thought that this fight would be something like Golovkin versus David Lemieux. You know, he was able to keep off David Lemieux with his jab, and I told you guys, Golovkin's jab is not going to be enough to stop Danny Jacobs from doing what he needed to do, right? And Golovkin has a decent jab. He has a really good jab, okay? But that wasn't enough to be able to beat a guy like Danny Jacobs. Now, I didn't say that Danny Jacobs won this fight officially, because officially he did not win this fight. But unofficially, I'm letting you know now, and I'm sure there are a number of people who will say the same thing, that Danny Jacobs, on my scorecard, won this bout between himself and Gennady GGG Golovkin. A lot of people thought that Danny Jacobs' chin would cause Golovkin to knock him out. I even heard his trainer, Abel Sanchez, saying that he thinks that Danny Jacobs will be taken out in the 8th round. No such thing happened. Now, this is how I saw the fight. I don't know how other people saw the fight. But I told you I hope that Golovkin wins this fight. And he did win. Now, was it a win that was, how do I put it? Was it a win that made Golovkin look like how he usually does? No. But let's get into my scoring of the fight, and I'm going to just give you a relatively detailed breakdown of how I thought the rounds went. The very first round of the fight, I thought Golovkin literally dictated the pace of the fight to some degree with his jab, and he had a nice little right hook that he landed to Jacobs' body. However, Jacobs made his presence known very early in that fight that this was not going to be the same kind of fight when he landed his right hook across Golovkin's head, and then he followed up with a couple other shots. And that should have told Golovkin from the get-go, this ain't going to be like other fights that he's had. Let me make it abundantly clear. Danny Jacobs is an A-level fighter. I said it in my video before. I said before that Gennady Golovkin was not just going to be able to walk Jacobs down like he did. Jacobs would make him pay. That's exactly what happened in this fight. If Golovkin slipped up, Jacobs was on him. Jacobs turned Golovkin, boxed Golovkin a bit, sometimes banged with him on the inside, but Jacobs controlled the pace and how this fight went. Interestingly enough, I noticed nobody really comments on this. Gennady Golovkin did not and was not able to cut off the ring on Danny Jacobs. And for more on that, I'll do another video. That's not what I'm about here. Now, interestingly enough, I thought that Golovkin won round 1, mainly because he was able to land his jab on Danny Jacobs in that round. He was the only guy really landing meaningful stuff, except for 1 or 2 shots that Danny Jacobs landed on Golovkin, and just letting Golovkin know, you know, I got pop here. You try to walk through me, you're gonna get hurt. Now after that, Golovkin was rather cautious. In round 2, Danny Jacobs switched it up and went southpaw on Golovkin. And with that open up angle, he was able to land not only jabs on Golovkin, but also some lead lefts and some left uppercuts on Golovkin. And from that, he would work off his combinations. So I thought that Danny Jacobs won round 2. Now round 3 is up for grabs. It depends on how you look at it. Golovkin started off really well early, and then Danny Jacobs kind of closed the show in spectacular fashion with some combinations and so on. But I thought that at the end of the day, I would give Gennady Golovkin that fight because he was still able to land some pretty nice shots to the body, especially the right hooks to the body, and he had a pretty on-point jab for the most part. Even though Danny Jacobs was mostly slipping that jab, and Golovkin couldn't really land the jab as he would like to, his timing with the jab is really the thing that makes Golovkin special. You know, it reminds me of Kostya a lot. Now, once again, round 4 comes up. Now, interestingly enough, round 4 was the round Danny Jacobs was actually winning. He was actually gaining control and so on. But Danny Jacobs, he basically made an error. And his trainer was really pretty angry with him about that. What he did was, he was in the southpaw stance. He had just thrown a right hook that Golovkin was able to roll. And Golovkin came back with a right hook. It touched Danny Jacobs, even though he had his guard up. It caught him, but not fully. And then Danny Jacobs decided to catch that hook, go off the hook, and actually throw his hook. And while he was throwing his hook, Golovkin came back with a right hook that caught Danny Jacobs. Now, in the middle of it, they were kind of tangled up as well. Their feet got tangled up. And so Danny Jacobs kind of tripped going backwards, so he was trying to grab Golovkin. But he also lost some of his feet below him with that shot. So it was a genuine knockdown, but it was a flash knockdown. It didn't really hurt Danny Jacobs. He got back up. You could see he was normal. He wasn't dizzy or wobbling or anything like that. And he proceeded to show that he wasn't hurt by keeping his guard up when Gennady Golovkin kept on throwing punches. It mostly hit his guard. And then he started to bring his attack to Golovkin. Most of his punches were blocked by Golovkin, but some 1 or 2 again got through and got Golovkin's attention, saying, hey, this dude's a live dog in there. However, round 5 was all Golovkin. Golovkin landed a beautiful right hook on Danny Jacobs. I was basically kind of having him more on the defensive, even though he was throwing some punches at Golovkin. But for the most part, even though Danny Jacobs did make a couple rallies in the 5th round, that was all a Golovkin round. So I have rounds 4, 5, 3, and 1, all Golovkin rounds. Okay, Danny Jacobs only winning round 2. However, from round 6 onward to round 12, my goodness, Danny Jacobs basically swept him. Okay, the only round I think Golovkin may have sneaked up and stole was round number 9. And Golovkin did some good work, I think, in the beginning of round 8, but Danny Jacobs came back. The majority of that round, I think from 130 something onwards, was all Danny Jacobs. Okay, so half of the round was Golovkin, half of the round was Jacobs, and I think there was another round where it was something like that. But I think that when you're talking about the work rate, who was controlling the fight, who was controlling the pace, who was landing the effective shots most of the time, who was the guy that had the good, better defense, you know, who was the guy hitting the clean, effective shots, it was Danny Jacobs. I don't think Golovkin won a single round after round 6. But some people will argue he stole round 9, and he began some of the rounds well. Quite frankly, he missed a lot. I would say that Danny Jacobs won this fight 7-5. I would say, okay, give Golovkin round 9. but it's still 7 rounds to 5. Danny Jacobs, 114, 113. That's how I have it. Couldn't really give Golovkin any other rounds. I mean, Danny Jacobs let it all out of the line. You saw him. He he fell down leaning into the ropes at the end of round 12. And he was the guy that won most of the exchanges. When he threw exchanges, even when he was brawling with Golovkin, he was the guy that was winning most of the exchanges, which was just incredible. You know what I'm saying? His defense was impeccable. I mean, his footwork was just demonstrable. I mean, you have to give Danny Jacobs all the props in the world. This dude was an A-grade fighter, Gennady Golovkin's first A-grade fighter, and I believe that Danny Jacobs took that fight by the slimmest of margins, but he still took it. Now, for those people who thought that the judges were correct in scoring Golovkin the winner of the fight, again, I don't have anything against you guys. I don't see it. But it's not a robbery in any way, shape, or form. But here's the point. The point is this. A lot of people counted Danny Jacobs out of this fight. Oh, he's chinny and so on. Even after the spectacular performance against Peter Quillin. And Danny Jacobs proved to everybody, not only was he a guy that would go the distance with Golovkin, not only was he a guy that would be competitive, he was a guy that actually won this fight. You can argue that he won the fight. Not that he could win the fight, that he won the fight. That's how convincing Danny Jacobs was. If he wasn't knocked down, the margin between him and Golovkin would have been even wider. Because you didn't hear a lot of people, Golovkin fans, cheering for Golovkin. And a lot of people didn't expect Danny Jacobs to put up that kind of fight. In fact, even the commentators for HBO, they were kind of speechless. Like, they weren't saying anything about any shots that Danny Jacobs actually landed for a good period of time, because they were looking at Golovkin and he wasn't doing nothing. He was just kind of being defensive and stalking Danny Jacobs. He wasn't throwing no punches. Why he wasn't throwing? Because he knew he had to pay. Danny Jacobs would light him up if he tried to just... And I got to give Golovkin a couple props. One, he's got an excellent poker face. Two, he's a tough MF, man. He's a tough mother so-and-so, okay? I saw when he got stunned in round 3 by Danny Jacobs' left hook. It was a short little left hook. After they just came out the clinch, he didn't expect it, and he got a little bit stunned. He was wobbled a little bit. Danny Jacobs was dropped, as we all know. But after that, there was nothing else to this fight. I mean, Danny Jacobs pretty much took over the fight. It's like he woke up after round 5, and he just took over the fight. Now, as to Golovkin's status on the pound-for-pound rankings, as to another fighter named Chocolatito on the pound-for-pound rankings, you see, the truth always comes out in the end. Right? We said that Gennady Golovkin was overhyped as a monster and a guy that would kill people in the ring and so on. Danny Jacobs proved that Gennady Golovkin, he's a good boxer, but he's got holes in his defense, that he's kind of one-dimensional, because Danny Jacobs made him look one-dimensional. But I'm still glad about 2 things about Gennady Golovkin. Now, I critique him as a boxer, but I want to say as a man, he's a man. Gennady Golovkin is a man. I listened to this brother talk about how good Danny Jacobs was and applaud him. I heard Abel Sanchez said that this brother is going to become the champion of the division. There's no doubt Danny Jacobs is going to become a world champion again. And when I heard these guys give the kind of accolades to Danny Jacobs that they did, it made me feel good, because it made me feel like Gennady Golovkin is a man. He's not one of those guys that makes excuses. I listened to Danny Jacobs behave like a man. And this is what impressed me the most. He lost. He didn't behave like a sore loser. He gave Gennady Golovkin his props. He gave him his respect. He respected the judge's decision, even though he thought in his heart that he won the fight. I listened to Danny Jacobs' trainer speak. And again, his trainer didn't harp on the fact that they lost the fight, didn't harp on the fact that they thought they should win. No. He talked about Golovkin, and then he talked about Danny. That's being a man. And I love that these 2 guys could be so above the fray. They could applaud each other. They could respect each other. So that even if the judges on the judges' scorecard didn't work in their favor or did work in their favor, they had the decency to applaud their opponent because they knew it was a close fight. And that's what we need as boxing fans. We need to edify the sport of boxing. So yeah, I thought Danny Jacobs won. But to be honest with you, Gennady Golovkin has proven himself by defeating an A-level fighter. And I would be a liar if I come on here and don't say that. Now, he didn't cut off the ring against Danny Jacobs because he couldn't. The skill set of Danny Jacobs was such that we call it slickness. And boy, a lot of young boxers, a lot of boxing fans could learn so much from what Danny Jacobs did in that ring against Gennady Golovkin. Do I think that Danny Jacobs deserved the win? Yes, of course I do. But then again, I also think that just because of the person of Gennady Golovkin, it's a good look on him that he is and remained champion. So I'm not against Gennady Golovkin getting the decision at all. But what it says about Danny Jacobs, y'all, is so much more than I could say about Gennady Golovkin. Danny Jacobs showed us that against the critics and the haters out there who still don't want to give him his props, but respect from so many other boxing fans for how he handled the situation, how he had that fight in his control. He had Gennady Golovkin in his control. Gennady Golovkin had to do what he wanted him to do in that ring. Shows so much about Danny Jacobs. He has lost nothing in this fight. He has gained everything. But I said before, when we talk about pound for pound status, a lot of people want to put down Canelo. A lot of people want to put down Floyd. A lot of people like to put down Andre Ward. Up to this day, Gennady Golovkin has just lost. Nobody wants to mention Andre Ward. They want to talk about Lomachenko. But they won't give Andre Ward his props. Andre Ward is the #1 pound for pound fighter in this world. He proved it. Gennady Golovkin just faced an A-level fighter. Andre Ward has faced multiple A-level fighters in his career. The fights that count. The mega fights. But he is not #1 pound for pound in the world? Are you serious? Let's talk about another fighter, shall we? Because like I said before, the truth rises to the surface. Roman Gonzalez. Roman Gonzalez faced Sisaket Sir Rungvisai. He's a Thai boxer. And this guy beat Roman Gonzalez fair and square. A lot of people say it was a robbery and blah, 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 blah. He was denied his 47th win and blah, blah. I don't want to hear that. He should have lost to Carlos Cuadras. He should have lost to Juan Francisco Estrada. Y'all know this. He's not Floyd Mayweather. No disrespect to him. He's not Floyd Mayweather. Now, people say it's easy to become 49-0. Not when you're facing competition like this. So the dude fought something like Marcos Maidana. Rough and rugged. And Roman Gonzalez lost the decision. Why? Because he got dropped. He got dropped. The truth rises to the top. I agreed with Roman Gonzalez being pound for pound #1 in the world back in 2015 when Floyd Mayweather resigned from the sport of boxing, when he left it. But when Andre Ward faced Sergey Kovalev and defeated him, you could not deny Andre Ward that #1 spot any longer. The resume of Andre Ward is superior to Roman Gonzalez's resume. It's just what it is. You can't be beating a pound for pound fighter, and the guy was the pound for pound #2 fighter in the world. You defeat him. Roman Gonzalez defeats no one on the pound for pound list. Yeah, he goes up in weight, but it's questionable if he even beat Carlos Cuadras. It's questionable. And Andre Ward is pound for pound number 2 in the world. So the truth had to come out. And they're still bucking. The ring is still bucking. They don't want to give Andre Ward his props. Who has Lomachenko fought on the level of a Sergey Kovalev? Who has Lomachenko fought on the level of a Carl Froch? Who has Lomachenko fought on the level of Mikhail Kessler? Who has Lomachenko fought on the level of Sullivan Barrera? Who has Lomachenko fought on the level? On the level of what Andre Ward has fought. But yes, you're talking about Lomachenko? You people are serious? You're not serious. That's why I said there are a lot of people who don't know anything about boxing. And don't tell me about being pleasing. Don't tell me about being crowd pleasing, because the crowd don't know boxing. So this dude validates the truth. And guess what? You can BS as much as you want, but the truth will come out. He beat Roman Gonzalez. For all those Roman Gonzalez fans, what you got to say now? He deserves the number 1 spot still? Andre Ward proved himself. That number 1 spot, he deserves that number 1 spot. He proved himself. How many times this brother had to prove himself? Moved up in weight, fought the boogeyman, roughed up the boogeyman, beat the boogeyman. But you won't give him his props? The number 1 boxer in the world, pound for pound, is Andre SOG Ward. The truth always comes to the surface. And if y'all keep on pushing Lomachenko, he'll lose again. Hell, he lost already. Stop running narratives. Stop working agendas. Like I said, I'm a fair dude. I said Roman Gonzalez deserved to be pound for pound number 1 after Floyd Mayweather left boxing. But I cannot defend him when Andre Ward beat Sergey Kovalev, a number 2 pound for pound fighter in the world. You don't replace Sergey Kovalev. No, you jump ahead of everybody else, because he's a pound for pound fighter. And if a pound for pound faces a pound for pound, hell, you got to get the pound for pound number 1 spot. Floyd Mayweather fought Manny Pacquiao. Pound for pound, he solidified it. He was a pound for pound number 1. End of story. It can't work for Floyd Mayweather, but it don't work for Andre Ward. If Manny Pacquiao beat Floyd Mayweather, he would have been the pound for pound number 1 fighter in the world. So I don't want the hypocrisy to continue. But the truth always comes to the surface. So Gennady Golovkin, good fighter, outboxed, outclassed for 6 rounds straight. You add in the 7th round, actually 7 rounds straight if you think about including the 9th round, because basically my boy Danny Jacobs outboxed him in the 9th round. He just stole the last end of the 9th round. Now I say my boy Danny Jacobs. But here's the good thing. The good news is Gennady Golovkin has made it past Danny Jacobs. So he can set up for that mega fight against Canelo Alvarez. We know boxing is a business. I watched Eric Bradley and Master Boxing. I understand boxing is a business. I understand why Danny Jacobs was not going to get that decision. I understand it. But the people saw. They saw. Even if you didn't know nothing about boxing, you saw what happened. Nonetheless, they're talking about possible rematch, and that's good. If they want to go ahead and do that, they should go ahead and do it. they're also talking about Gennady Golovkin facing Billy Joe Saunders in his home country of Kazakhstan. Billy Joe Saunders is a smart dude. After he's seen what he's seen, he feels he has a great chance against Gennady Golovkin because Billy Joe Saunders can box. He can box. Canelo Alvarez will fancy his chances against Gennady Golovkin because Canelo Alvarez, I believe, is the perfect guy to fight Gennady Golovkin because Canelo's got that defense. But now we know Danny Jacobs got that defense too. You know, we've seen it. So, you know, a lot of people now see Golovkin and they see him as beatable. You know, it is what it is. But we know Golovkin is not pound for pound #1 boxer in the world like Larry Merchant likes us to feel. Okay? We know the HBO commentary team is going to be biased towards Gennady Golovkin. We get it. Biased towards Sergey Kovalev. We get it. But you got to call a spade a spade. Outboxed for 6 rounds. Sorry, 7. Outboxed. Not just outboxed, but also the guy doing most of the tattooing was Jacobs. If Gennady Golovkin had his way and he could have tattooed Jacobs a lot more, he would have done it. Right? I think this was a testimony once again to the fact that casual fans talk a lot. People who know boxing talk with substance. And there's a difference between a casual fan who has to tear down someone to build up someone else and people who know boxing who can appreciate what they see. Some of the things I liked about Gennady Golovkin was how he was able to sort of nullify Jacobs' pull counter by ducking under the counter. So he would throw his jab and then he would duck under the counter. He showed that he had some defense in terms of shoulder rolling and moving. You know, he still tagged, just like how Kell Brook was tagging him. Jacobs was tagging him. And he's a tough dude, though. He sucks it up and he keeps coming. Jacobs landed some nasty body shots on him. He got 1 or 2 good body shots and some good headshots on Jacobs as well. So at the end of the day, this fight was a nice fight. Now, a sweet fight. But Danny Jacobs shows he's on a whole other level to all the other boxers out there. And not only is he on another level, he's on a higher level than Gennady Golovkin when I watched this fight and how he pretty much controlled every round from 6th to 12th. Any little point where Gennady Golovkin actually hit him was his mistake, to instead trade, instead of box at certain points where he needed to shift. Sometimes he would stand directly in front of Gennady Golovkin and Golovkin just couldn't hit him. I mean, he wasn't even moving with his feet. He would just stand up there and bob and weave and slip and slide. Well, not slide, but slip punches and so on, and roll punches. Which shows what kind of fighter Danny Jacobs is. So for those of you who didn't believe when he knocked out Peter Quillen, now you know it ain't a fluke. Okay, brother can box, brother can fight. Okay, here's what you see. And you also realize when the competition is stepped up, when Gennady Golovkin has to face a fighter who is an A-level fighter, he ain't going to get him out of there unless he's from another weight class. Okay? He's not going to get him out of there. So, now you know that it was the level of competition, which is why Gennady Golovkin was steamrolling through those middleweights. Now, you need to pay attention to Peter Quillen. Now, you need to pay attention to Canelo Alvarez. Because them is 2 other cats who can defeat Gennady Golovkin. I do sincerely believe that. Okay? I never said I believe that Danny Jacobs would beat Golovkin, but I knew he was a big threat. But in fact, on my scorecard, and you can make an argument for this, he did beat Golovkin. So, if he can beat Golovkin, I think Quillen beats him. I think also that Saul Canelo Alvarez beats him. I don't know if Quillen would get the credit like Danny Jacobs would by the judges, but I do know that those guys can beat him. All right, I probably would. I'm pretty certain about Canelo. So you saw, you know, this is boxing. I would love to be on a podcast with some other people to talk about this a little bit further. But I just wanted to let you see what the truth of the situation is versus what some of these casual fans who like to name call and like to behave like complete idiots because they're always very aggressive and always very caustic and negative towards anybody else. I want to show and expose these idiots out there, posing as hardcore fans, posing as people knowledgeable of boxing. You know, these are the people that make the sport of boxing sort of dumbed down and stupid. You know what I mean? You want to critique Floyd Mayweather. You know, you want to critique Andre Ward. You want to critique Canelo Alvarez. You wanted to down talk Danny Jacobs. Well, what you gonna say now? What you gonna say now? Huh? You want to talk all this stuff because this dude was getting knockouts. He didn't get a knockout against Danny Jacobs. He damn near almost lost the fight. In some people's eyes, he lost it. What does that say? He got pedigree, he got class, but the competition he was facing wasn't on his level. But when the competition came, which was above his level, in this case, was A-level competition, he struggled. He looked one-dimensional. And I ain't hating on Gennady Golovkin because, like I said, he's a first-class sort of dude. Silver medalist, even defeated Andre Durrell in the Olympics. He's a good boxer. But I'm just saying, what people overhyped him to be, this monster, this guy who had tremendous power, this guy nobody could stand up to, was a lie. And that's why I say Gennady Golovkin's overhyped. He ain't no wrecking train. Mike Tyson was overhyped. When Mike Tyson met Evander Holyfield, all of a sudden, he couldn't win, and he got his ass knocked out. Right? Overhyped. Don't always believe the hype. On that note, you guys have a great